The house was never for sale. That was the sentence the detective said to Michael Harris while sitting across from him in a small interview room in a police station in Texas. No raised voice, no drama, just a flat statement delivered like a fact that had always existed. The house was never for sale. Michael laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because his brain rejected the idea completely. He had walked through that house. He had signed papers. He had transferred money. He had keys in his pocket. He had slept there for 3 nights. But the detective repeated it again, slower this time, like explaining something to a child. The house was never for sale. Michael Harris was 42 years old and had spent most of his life doing things the boring, responsible way. He worked in IT support for a regional healthcare company, lived in apartments across different cities, and moved whenever rent became unreasonable. He had never owned property, not because he didn't want to, but because timing never worked out. When his company allowed permanent remote work, Michael decided it was finally time. He wanted space, quiet, a yard where no one else's noise spilled into his life. He didn't want luxury. He wanted control. That's when he found the house online. It was listed in a mid-sized city in Arizona and a neighborhood that looked older but stable. Mature trees, wide streets, single-story homes. The price wasn't unbelievably low, but it was reasonable, especially compared to the market he had been watching for months. Nothing about it screamed scam. The listing mentioned a private sale, no agents, owner relocating for work, flexible closing. Michael liked that. Less competition, less pressure. The seller's name was listed as Thomas Reed. Their first conversation happened over email. Thomas explained that he worked in another state and couldn't manage showings easily, but he could arrange access. He sounded normal, slightly rushed, polite, not salesy. Michael drove to see the house using a temporary access code Thomas provided. The door opened. The house was empty but clean. No furniture, no personal items. It felt like someone had already moved out. Michael walked through every room slowly. Everything felt solid. No strange smells, no obvious damage. It felt like a house someone had lived in and recently left. He emailed Thomas that evening and said he was interested. The reply came quickly. They talked about price, closing timeline. Michael asked why Thomas wasn't using an agent. Thomas said he'd had bad experiences before and preferred direct deals. He mentioned needing to move quickly due to a job relocation. Again, nothing strange. Thomas sent documents, deed copies, tax records, utility statements. Everything matched the address. The name on the documents matched the seller's name. Michael even searched public records online and saw the same name connected to the property. That was the detail that made him feel safe. Michael hired a real estate attorney to review the documents. The attorney didn't raise major concerns. Everything looked normal, clean enough to proceed. The funds were wired into what appeared to be a standard escrow account. The closing happened digitally. Michael received confirmation emails, signed final documents, and was sent a message congratulating him on his purchase. The access code to the door was replaced with a physical key left inside the house. Michael moved in quietly. He didn't tell many people. He worked during the day, unpacked at night, and enjoyed the strange calm of finally being settled. He slept better than he had in years. On the 4th morning, there was a knock on the door. Michael assumed it was a neighbor. Instead, it was a man and a woman standing on the porch, both confused, both holding papers. The man asked who Michael was. Michael said he lived there. The woman frowned and said they owned the house. The conversation spiraled quickly. They had not sold the property. They had been out of state for several months caring for a sick relative. They had never heard of Thomas Reed. They had not listed the house anywhere. Police were called. That's when Michael heard the sentence that would erase weeks of certainty in a single moment. The house was never for sale. The investigation unfolded slowly and painfully. Someone had copied public records, created a false identity using the name of a previous owner, and listed the property while the real owners were away. Access codes had been obtained through old contractors. Documents had been forged just well enough to pass surface-level checks. The escrow account was fake. The emails vanished. The phone number disconnected. Michael's money was gone. Legally, he had no claim to the property. He had never owned it. He had no right to be there. He moved out the same day. In the months that followed, Michael learned how common the scam actually was. Vacant or temporarily unoccupied homes, public records, professional language, fake escrow services, entire transactions completed remotely. The scam didn't rely on greed, it relied on trust. Michael returned to renting, smaller place, short lease. He became paranoid about listings, suspicious of convenience. Every good deal felt dangerous. Years later, when asked about the experience, Michael didn't talk about the money first. He talked about waking up in a house that felt like his, only to learn it never was. The house was never for sale, and neither, he realized, was the sense of safety he thought he had bought.